This episode has no supernatural elements or murder mysteries, just a truly satisfying case. So get your snacks, drinks, and tissues ready because this story might just bring tears to your eyes.
被告人于花英犯拐卖儿童罪，判处死刑，剥夺政治权利终身，并处没收个人全部财产。这是发回重审之后一审的再次判决。
The raspy-voiced, impassioned woman you see in the video is Niuhua, but who is she, and who is the Yu Huaying she keeps mentioning? To understand, we have to go back to 1995 in the province of Guizhou. Niuhua was born in 1990 into a Miao family in the mountainous regions of Guizhou as the second daughter in the household. Her father was an intellectual who, even in those harsh times, finished the high school course. Hoping to build a better future, he eventually moved the whole family to the city center, where life was happy and full of hope. Their new neighbor was a woman named Yu Huaying. Though she looked a bit stern, she was genuinely kind and often brought her little daughter to play with Niuhua and her sister. Kids form friendships fast, so before long, Niuhua and her sister were like family to Yu. One day, as Niuhua was playing outside, Yu approached her and asked, "Would you like a gift?" Niuhua thought for a moment and replied, "I want knitting needles." With a warm smile, Yu said, "Sure, how about we go to town to buy them?" Trusting and unsuspecting, Niuhua agreed immediately. She even waved goodbye to her sister, not knowing it would be for the last time in 26 years. Yu first took Niuhua to the bus station, then disguised her by changing her clothes, and from there, they boarded a train bound for Hebei province. Along the way, Niuhua started feeling scared and asked to go home. Yu quickly dropped her kind facade, resorting to beatings and threats. Terrified, the little girl had no choice but to obey, clinging to a fragile hope that this neighbor would eventually take her home. Instead, Niuhua was taken farther and farther from home until she ended up in a poor village in Handan, Hebei province, where she was sold for 2,500 yuan. Her buyer was a 70-year-old woman who had a 40-year-old deaf-mute son. To erase Niuhua's past, the old woman renamed her Li Suyan and declared this was her new home. She was now her grandmother, and the middle-aged man was her adoptive father. Life with the grandmother was harsh. She often beat and scolded Niuhua, saying things like, "I paid 2,500 yuan for you. You owe me, so behave." At the same time, rumors spread in the village, labeling Niuhua as a deaf man's child bride. Thankfully, her adoptive father was a kind-hearted man who treated Niuhua as his own daughter, secretly giving her pocket money and trying to make her smile. These small acts of kindness lit up an otherwise dark childhood. By age 13, it was time for Niuhua to start middle school. But the crafty grandmother feared that education would make her uncontrollable and eventually lead to her escape. So she forced Niuhua to drop out and sent her to work. Afterward, the young and frail girl began working as a laborer in a supermarket. When she finally reached adulthood, she moved on to a factory job, screwing boats. Having learned from a young age to read people's emotions, she developed a high emotional intelligence. Her efforts soon won her the favor of her boss, who promoted her to assistant to the general manager, and life gradually began to improve. But even after 20 years, the scars of her past never fully healed. On countless sleepless nights, Niuhua would search through her blurred memories for glimpses of her parents and sister. She would ask herself again and again, why didn't they come for me? Did they truly sell me off? Yet, in moments of weary sleep, she dreamed of her father's kind eyes. She remembered how, despite their poverty, he'd bring chicken drumsticks home and carefully tear them into tiny pieces to feed her. He'd buy expensive wool sweaters to keep her warm in winter. Reassured by these memories, Niuhua clung to the belief that her parents would never willingly give her up, and she will find them one day. Once the seed of finding her family took root, it never faded. Later, she married and had children, and with her own precious little ones in her life, she became even more convinced that no parent would abandon their child so easily. Then, she shared her story with her husband, expressing her desire to find her birth family. Her husband was shocked by her experience and deeply sympathetic. offered his full support for her search. First, she submitted a DNA sample and, relying on faint childhood memories, documented everything she could remember. By 2015, short videos were gaining popularity, so volunteers helped her record a Douyin video detailing her story.
广大的网友们，我希望得到大家的帮助。我是一名被拐儿童，我出生1990年左右，在1996年的冬天农历11月底腊月初被拐到河北邯郸。我记得我是跟着父母在他们打工的地方被拐走。我父母在外打工，带着我和姐姐租了一间房，在2楼。隔壁新来了一个邻居是人贩子，跟我混熟之后把我带走。我记得我爸爸好像叫杨新民，我叫杨妞花，杨妞妞。我姐姐的名字我不知道是不是她名字，我就喊桑英这样的发音。我喊外婆是阿布代这样的发音。喊妈妈是妈一是这样的发音。我记得我老家是住山区的，离火车道很近，站在猪圈上可以看到一个集市，还可以看到一个大山，山上面有一个山洞，那个洞周边都是被植物都长满了植物，跟山上植物一样。从小我经常就是在院子里面等我姐姐放学，我姐姐下学的时候她会从上坡走下来，具体学校在哪里我不太清楚，我当时还没有上学。我希望大家帮我扩散消息，让我的家人看到，帮助我早点回家，谢谢。
One day passed, then two, and while the views continued to climb, there was still no response. However, once the attention took off, it quickly connected people across the nation. Finally, one afternoon, she received a message in her inbox. The sender was a young woman who said her family had a cousin who had gone missing as a child. The cousin's name was Yang Niuhua, with a father named Yang Ximing and a mother named Xiong Mianyi, names that matched Niuhua's memories exactly. Soon, with the help of her cousin, Niuhua was able to get in touch with her older sister, Yang Sangying. When Sangying first saw Niuhua, she couldn't hold back her tears. They looked so much alike, down to the same eyes as their fathers. Then, a DNA test confirmed what everyone felt. They were sisters separated 26 years ago. Happiness came so suddenly. Niuhua truly found her home. Soon, under her sister's guidance, Niuhua returned to her hometown in Guizhou province. By then, villagers had already hung up a banner reading, "Welcome home." Relatives who saw Niuhua were moved to tears. Yet, despite waiting and looking around, Niuhua never saw her parents appear. Finally, her sister tearfully revealed that their parents had passed away many years ago. It turns out that after Niuhua disappeared, the family fell apart overnight. Her parents immediately reported her missing to the police. However, at that time in China, there was no nationwide identification system, and the population data was chaotic, making searches extremely difficult. After a week of searching yielded no leads, Niuhua's parents quit their jobs and moved into the train station, holding the photo and asking anyone they could about their missing daughter. But their efforts remained fruitless. Over time, her father sank into a deep depression and turned to alcohol. When intoxicated, he became paranoid, convinced that everyone he saw was a child trafficker. He would confront strangers, shouting, "Where have you taken my girl?" Then collapsed onto the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Then, with hollow eyes, he would stare blankly into the distance and murmur, "Where's my camel? Where's my camel?" The camel symbolized the deep bond between the father and the daughter. In their hometown, there was a tradition. When someone passed away, the family would buy a yellow bowl. Once, when Niuhua accompanied her father to a funeral, she noticed that the family's bowl was small. So she said to her dad, "Dad, when you die, I'll get you a big one." Instead of scolding her, her father smiled warmly and replied, "All right, my little girl loves Dad the most." Later, when they moved to the city, Niuhua saw a camel for the first time. Impressed by its grandeur, she said, "Daddy, I'll get you a camel instead." Those words from his beloved daughter left a deep mark on his heart, and after she went missing, his world collapsed. The only thing that remained etched in his memory was his little girl and the promised camel, the symbol of her love. What's worse, Niuhua's mother also crumbled under the weight of the loss. Her physical and mental health deteriorated rapidly. She was set an extra place at the dinner table, insisting it was for Niuhua. On one occasion, while hospitalized, she disappeared in the middle of the night to search for her daughter in the mountains. When found, she was weak, having lost a substantial amount of blood through her IV drip. Her only words were, "Niuhua came back. I heard her calling me." Just 4 years after Niuhua's abduction, both parents succumbed to their grief and passed away at the age of 32. This tragedy left Niuhua's older sister, Sangying, an orphan. She lived temporarily with her uncle, but dropped out of school early to work and support herself. A once happy family had been destroyed by human traffickers in this way. Upon learning the truth, Niuhua's heart broke. She and her sister rushed to their parents' graves. Throughout her life, Niuhua had dreamed countless times about reuniting with her parents, hugging them, buying them gifts, and bringing them to live with her. But standing before their graves, she realized those dreams would never come true. She no longer had a home. But Niuhua was not one to give in to despair. After a period of intense grieving, she resolved, "This isn't over. I will make the culprits pay." Her first step was to file a police report. However, reopening a human trafficking case more than 20 years old was no easy feat. There were too few leads, and identifying both the traffickers and potential witnesses was nearly impossible. But Niuhua began sifting through her fragmented memories from when she was 5 years old. Finally, she remembered a man named Wang Guofu. Wang was from her village and was now in his 90s. Soon, Niuhua found him. But this old bastard feigned ignorance, claiming he knew nothing. Determined, Niuhua began visiting him every day, gradually wearing down his defenses. She told him, "You are already at an advanced age and face no legal repercussions. I'm not here to punish you. I just want to find out who orchestrated everything." Perhaps due to his age or his sleeping memory, Wang eventually let slip a crucial name. Little Yu? Was it Little Yu? Yu Huaying? As the words left her mouth, both Wang and Niuhua were stunned. Wang never imagined that Niuhua would still remember this name after 26 years. And Niuhua was shocked that a name buried so deeply in her 5-year-old memories could resurface so suddenly. With this crucial lead, Niuhua rushed to the police station. Less than a month after filing a formal report, Yu Huaying was apprehended in a mahjong parlor. The moment Niuhua saw Yu, she recognized her immediately. She would never forget those sinister, triangular eyes and the crucial expression on her face whenever she was abusive. Adding fuel to the fire, Yu seemed to live comfortably and displayed a brazen attitude. She denied everything, even accusing Niuhua of slander. At that moment, Niuhua realized this remorseless monster deserves no mercy. She must take Yu Huaying to court. Before Niuhua starts seeking her revenge, let's take a closer look at who this Yu Huaying really is and just how much of a monster she was. Yu Huaying was born in 1963 in a modest family in Yunnan province. Due to family crisis, her education ended abruptly in the 2nd grade, forcing her to work on the farm. In 1984, at the age of 21, Yu met Wang Jiawen from Chongqing province. The two later returned to Wang's hometown and got married, but their reputation among villagers was poor. They were seen as lazy and deceitful, constantly engaging in unscrupulous schemes. In 1992, Wang was arrested for theft, leaving Yu and her daughter to fend for themselves. Desperate for money, she handed her daughter over to Wang's brother for care while she took a job at a restaurant. During this time, Yu became involved with Gong Xianliang, a wealthy contractor 20 years her senior. Although he was married, Yu had no qualms about secretly living with him, eventually giving birth to a son. However, Gong had no intention of accepting responsibility for their child, and Yu could not afford to care for him alone. In a shocking and inhumane decision, the pair decided to sell the boy. Yes, you heard it right, sell their own son. With Gong's connections, they found a buyer in Hebei, and because the child was male, the transaction was quickly completed, earning them thousands of yuan. The substantial profit led Yu and Gong to realize the lucrative nature of child trafficking. Thus, they decided to make it their business. Starting in 1993, Yu and Gong embarked on a 10-year criminal spree, abducting 17 children from southwest China and selling them in Hebei. These 17 children came from 12 families. Some were abandoned when they proved difficult to sell, while others, especially girls, were sold after multiple transactions. Regardless of the circumstances, each child's life was profoundly scarred and 12 families were torn apart. In 2000, Yu was arrested on suspicion of child trafficking, but shockingly, after just 2 months of detention, she was released. In 2004, her husband was released and they resumed their crimes, kidnapping 2 children in Yunnan. Fortunately, 1 child was rescued thanks to a timely report, and the police captured Yu and Wang again. During interrogation, both concealed their true identities, evading a thorough investigation by local law enforcement. On September 27th of that year, they were sentenced to 8 years in prison. But due to good behavior, Yu received multiple sentence reductions and was released in 2009. Finally, she returned to Chongqing, seemingly living a normal life, until Niuhua found her and sought justice.
于华英，你还认识我吗？
我认识啊。
认识是吧？你叫我于华英，我整整记了26年，我一直都记得的。
The video shows Niuhua confronting Yu Huaying during the retrial's first hearing. By this point, Yu's former arrogance had faded, replaced by fear. Niuhua seized the moment, determined to utterly break the demon. But before this, her pursuit of justice was never easy. In February 2023, the Nanming District Prosecutor's Office in Guiyang brought charges against Yu Huaying. In April, Niuhua, through her lawyer, filed a lawsuit against Yu, seeking an additional civil compensation of over 7.9 million yuan. In July, the Guiyang Intermediate Court tried Yu Huaying for child trafficking. Yu ultimately confessed her guilt during her final statement. In September, the Guiyang Intermediate Court sentenced Yu to death. Then, Yu admitted her crimes but argued that her punishment was excessive. The prosecutor countered with the strength of the evidence, deeming her appeal groundless and recommending the original sentence be upheld. On January 8, 2024, the court granted a retrial due to new evidence. In October, the Guiyang court reconvened to examine Yu's previous overlooked crimes, increasing the number of victims from 11 to 17 across 4 cases. Victims and their families called for the harshest possible punishment. At the same time, Niuhua pressed additional charges for child abuse and raised the damages sought for 9.8 million yuan, aiming to ensure Yu faced the full weight of justice. Yu remained defiant, denying the abuse and blaming her husband Wang Jiawen and lover Gong Xianliang, even sneering at Niuhua's accusations. Finally, on October 25, 2024, the Guiyang Intermediate Court handed down its verdict. Yu Huaying was sentenced to death for child trafficking, stripped of political rights for life, and all personal assets confiscated. The court also ordered her to pay 30,000 yuan in compensation to each of the 8 victims, totaling 240,000 yuan, and to cover costs incurred by victims searching for their families. Additional damages for mental anguish were also awarded. The sentencing marked the end of Yu's life, and during a final interview, she expressed deep regret. But I think her remorse stems not from her crimes, but from being caught. In reality, I think she likely regretted not silencing Niuhua when she had the chance, seeing her as a threat she should have eliminated long ago. After 26 long years, young Niuhua finally achieved justice. With the court ruling in hand, she visited her parents' graves and tearfully shared that she had brought the true culprit to justice. That night, she dreamed of her mother once again. Her mother arrived on a small boat, saying she had to leave. Niuhua escorted her to the riverbank, telling her that everything was finally over, she will live well with her sister and let's be family again in the next life. Reflecting on her life so far, Niuhua's heart was filled with mixed emotions: sorrow, heartbreak, desperation, but love. She said that everyone she met in her life was a good person except for the child trafficker. This is why I call her a heroine. Despite enduring endless hardships, she always turned toward the light. When speaking about her adopted family, Niuhua expressed sincere gratitude toward them. Her adopted father, despite being deaf and mute, was a kind-hearted man who treated her as his own daughter. When Niuhua got married, he tearfully signed in sign language to her husband, urging him to treat her well and never harm her. Upon learning of Niuhua's biological parents' fate, he cried uncontrollably and tried to comfort her. Their bond was one of fate, but his silent love dispelled any darkness. Actually, her grandmother also did not know that Niuhua had been trafficked. The traffickers told her she was an abandoned girl left by her parents. Out of compassion, the grandmother bought her, hoping to have someone to care for in her old age. Niuhua believes that, if not for her grandmother, she might have been abandoned again by Yu Huaying and died somewhere else. Today, Niuhua is surrounded by family members, including her sister, aunt, and others. Throughout the trial, her sister, Sangying, never left her side. At one point, a reporter jokingly remarked on how tightly Sangying hugged Niuhua, and Sangying responded with a smile, "I have to hold her tight. I'm afraid she'll go missing again." Niuhua left alone, genuinely happy. Niuhua has now embarked on a new chapter in her life. She has opened a beauty salon where she collaborates with the police by establishing a green channel for blood sampling, aiming at reuniting children with their parents. Blood samples are directly sent to law enforcement for entry into the anti-trafficking DNA database. She has also started a Douyin account and published her autobiography, dedicating all proceeds to helping families searching for their children. Niuhua has even taken to the stage as a speaker, displaying a sharp mind and vibrant energy, much like a flower blooming on a cliff, resilient and full of life. Young Niuhua's contributions to combating child trafficking are monumental, but even more so, she symbolizes the strength of modern women, intelligent, resilient, and courageous. If you admire Niuhua and her journey of transformation, don't forget to like this video. Let's wish her a bright future together.